So today I'll share the lessons we learned from disseminating the PopART Phylogenetics research results to Zambian communities in Zambia. And I want to acknowledge, the input of my colleagues whose effort was really cardinal to ensure that this work was made possible. Some colleagues are here in Zambia, but I want to acknowledge Anna and Lucy for their input. So thanks very much, Lucy and Anna. So the phylogenetic study was nested within the PopART study, which, as we know, was a cluster randomized trial conducted in 12 communities in Zambia and 9 communities in South Africa. And it evaluated the impact of a door-to-door UTT intervention on population level HIV incidence. But the phylogenetic study itself was only nested in 12 communities in Zambia and not in South Africa. And it aimed to identify factors that contribute to HIV transmission. This could be demographic, clinical, and epidemiological factors. And also to find out, the pattern and proportion of transmission between communities and outside the PopART communities, and also to evaluate the prevalence and spread of antiviral drug resistance in the study communities, really finding out how much drug resistance there was during the intervention. And more importantly, to contribute samples to the Gates funded PANGEA consortium, which we are all part of, and I believe we like. So when we disseminated the main PopART results, the phylogenetics results were not ready. And last year, we wrote a small proposal to PANGEA to ask for funding to just disseminate the findings to communities, because we thought that it was very important ethically and otherwise to disseminate findings to people that took part in the study, who invested so much in terms of energy and everything else. And we were lucky that Christoph and colleagues did give us the funding. So by and large, the objectives of the dissemination exercise were to facilitate understanding of the phylogenetics research findings in the 12 communities, and to provide an opportunity for communities to, really reflect on what these results mean to themselves as individuals, but also to themselves as communities, as a collective. And also to develop a process of disseminating such results, including tools. And in this regard, we actually developing a manual, something we've identified as a critical tool. More importantly, to disseminate the findings to 2 key stakeholders. One, the district health officials, who were very cardinal in implementing this study in terms of giving authority, but also sometimes monitoring, the implementation of the study. But more importantly, the community-based partners, the CAB members, the people who took part in the study, the opinion lead. This presentation is based on the second stakeholder, who are the community and not the district health officials. The dissemination to the district health officials was done by Muhammad, and I hope one day he can also present on the lessons learned from there. The other objective was to facilitate, community reflection on key concepts such as broad consent and return of results. This we did through a 2-day workshop. And I must say here that during implementation of the study itself, individuals did not have an opportunity to really reflect on such things. And we thought that maybe during dissemination, it was an opportunity to really, ask individuals to reflect on some of those important issues. So as I said, we disseminated to all the 12 communities, and we had good attendance of about 25 to 35 participants in each community. And as I mentioned, we disseminated to a broad range of community members. Process to develop the dissemination material to ensure that the material would really, be understandable, and that they would relate really to the context. So the first thing we did was to to translate the key messages in 3 main languages that we use or that we are going to use in the 12 communities, the languages that are widely spoken in the 12 communities. Then we created images and pictures depicting the key messages. And when I say the key messages, these are actually the main findings, the actual results. Some of the images we were able to get on the internet, and some we just had to really create. And then we asked the Lusaka-based community representatives, the CAB members, to review the material. If you've been to Zambia, you know that our communities, the PopART communities, were widely dispersed. Some as far as 400 kilometers from Lusaka. So naturally, would sometimes would use the CAB members based on Lusaka to help review materials before we have maybe, let's say, a national meeting. We also piloted the actual dissemination in the Lusaka communities, and then we had a national CAB meeting to review the dissemination material. So this is really an example of a finding or a key message, and that we translated in 3 languages. I'm sorry, in Tonga, Nyanja, and Bemba. And the finding here is that an increasingly large fraction of transmission is expected to come from treated individuals who are not virally suppressed, and individuals who interrupt treatment. So really, the lesson we learned from this translation in that, or the feedback we got, is that some of the translations like this that we've given as an example are too formal and too deep. And so during presentations, actually, we were forced many times to use the lighter versions of the language that are spoken in these communities. But what we found very useful from these translations was that there were particular concepts. So for example, transmission here, that would be difficult for us to even to explain in communities, but because we already translated this, it was easy for us to go back to those translations and explain those the difficult concepts much more easily. So you can see here that the same message, okay, has been now put into an image, and it became much easier for the people to actually understand, the message when translated into image like this one. And in this image, we can see in the first tube, a person with a high viral load, detectable viral load, I would say. And in the second tube, we can see that the viral load is no longer detectable when they start treatment. And in the third tube, we can see that it becomes detectable again after the have interrupted treatment. So you can see that it became much easier really for people to relate or to understand the message with them in the image form than it was actually in written form. And just to give you another example, in this example, the finding or the key message is that men aged 25 to 35 accounted for a disproportionate amount of transmission. Again, you can see here that there's an arrow to many people from a man that is aged 25 to 35, meaning that he is accounting for more transmission than the man above with age over 35 years. Yeah, again, as you can see, it's of course, when one looks at this, for some, they could easily decipher the meaning of what this key message was saying. But for others, of course, we needed explanation, but explaining a bit further. But when you explain with these images, it was easy for people to actually understand. So in terms of disseminating, so I've just been talking about the first of all, the development process and the materials we use. In terms of disseminating, we followed a particular process, and this was really also designed to improve understanding of the results. The first thing we did was to remind the participants about the objective of the main study, the PopART study, and also the phylogenetics study. And then we moved on to present the findings using a mix of methods, including participatory methods. And in many ways, we, at the beginning, it was more of like an education session because we needed people to understand a few things, including genes, and things like that in order for them to understand the results. So that's why I'm calling it a deliberative plenary discussion. So we needed that kind of, deliberate, discussions in order for people to fully appreciate, the background to the study and before they can actually understand the actual, findings. We had also put results on flip charts and also on PowerPoint. On PowerPoint, because we were never assured of availability of power throughout, but also on flip chart because again, some people relate very well to visual, things, and also having put the flip chart, results on flip chart was easy for people to glance at them throughout the presentation, and it helped them really to keep pace, with the presentation. After presenting the results, we then had focus group discussions, divided individuals into the participants into focus group discussions, and they answered, the following questions in each focus group. But more importantly, we wanted, the participants or the committee members to reflect on what the results mean to them and the community, but also reflect on the dissemination process itself and provide us feedback. Then we had a 2-day workshop, as I said, which was conducted after the dissemination meetings. So we found that using local examples, and I've got colleagues here who participated in the dissemination, I think you can say one or two things, helped, to to contextualize the findings and for people to relate to the findings. And thanks to everyone here, Anna, Lucy, and others, we thought about using an example of a necklace, to describe genes and also to describe how transmission can be inferred, from one person to another. So in this example, we asked participants to imagine that someone gives them a necklace with beads in 4 different colors in a random order. And then they make an identical necklace, but exchange one bead and then hand it to the next person. As you can see, the necklace here has got a lot of beads, but basically there are 4 colors, 1, 2, 3, and this one, 4 colors that make up the bead. So, so we also asked the participants to imagine that every person who has been handed over, the necklace, changes the color of one bead before handing over to the next person, and then the next person does the same. So in our presentation on flip charts, we had many necklaces just to show how each person who was handed over the bead, the necklace, changed at least one color of the bead before handing over the necklace to another person who did the same. So then we explained to say that the necklace is the genetic material of HIV, and the beads are the 4 genetic building blocks, and each infected person has their own unique HIV necklace. And if they infect somebody, the newly infected person will have a similar necklace to the person who actually infected them, but the virus would actually slightly different. So it became actually clear to the people how using the necklace, and here the necklace was used as an analogy, for sequencing, that we can find, out about several things, including, how the sequences are closely related, and which sequences are so closely related that you can infer that, this person transmitted, the virus from this person transmitted the virus to another person, or how closely related the viruses, are in the different communities. So it became actually very, very easy. But we also explained that we cannot actually tell definitely that who infected whom with certainty, and also which individuals passed on the virus more than the others. And I think this was very, very important, again, to try and explain that even with the sequencing methods, we cannot be 100%, especially to talk about infection between individuals. So, so using the necklace example, in many ways, really improved understanding, of the results, and there were also several analogies that we used to contextualize, the findings. So for example, this person said if community members had similar beads, then infection was local. If beads looked different, then they were coming from outside the community. So meaning that actually they were able to understand from the use of beads how they can infer transmission between individuals and between communities. And we also found out that the participatory methods really kept people engaged and interested. So for example, this person said it was easy to understand because the facilitator kept us awake and active by giving us energizers and also use questions and answer methods. Yeah. We also, found out that using local language itself was quite, of course, quite difficult, but quite useful in helping people understand. and also using pictures, illustrations, and some of the videos that we had was quite useful, especially for people who are a bit illiterate. So for example, this person says, I can tell that the young man is transmitting more than the older man, and that's the picture I showed earlier. And we also found out that putting the results on a flip chart made it easy for people to follow and to refer to any time. And even actually during breaks, you could see people going back, to the flip charts, trying to, ensure that they get the message more clearly, because I think that phylogenetics as a topic is quite dense and quite scientific and complex. So I think that having put results on the flip charts meant that or made sure that we moved at the same pace as the community members in terms of understanding, the findings. As I said, we also reflected on broad consent in a workshop following the dissemination meetings. And the reason why we did this is because during the PopART study, as we were all know, we contributed samples to PANGEA, but we also felt that during the actual study, people had little time really, or no time to reflect on issues like broad consent. So according to the participants, they thought that broad consent would result in loss of control and sometimes a feeling of hopelessness after samples have been, shipped out. Like this person said, it's not like we can follow them once they are shipped. It's difficult to follow up for personal information. For instance, you cannot actually monitor anymore. Yeah. There are some people that fear that blood could be used, for ritualistic, or for ritual activities. As you know, this is a fear that is very common, in here back home, and I think Africa as a whole. And there are also issues of mistrust, for outsiders. Who some people said would want to exterminate the African population. Like someone said, you have some sense of worry as as far as consent is concerned, because when the sample is taken, you give broad consent, but you can't run away from scientists who want to experiment on everything. What if they want to destroy Zambia using science? Yeah. So basically here the worry was, yes, there are good scientists, who want to help, who want to develop therapies, and so on and so forth, that will improve, the health and well-being of the African population. But there are also some who thought, yes, they could also be bad scientists. But overall, again, the workshop or the meeting, agreed that broad consent is very important and would actually reduce the cost of research, and some actually did stress the fact that Zambians or local individuals should be, heavily involved, when the samples have been shipped out, either to be on the boards, of the institution which is keeping the sample, and so on and so forth. And we did talk about, how the PANGEA consortium is right now structured, which includes people like me and other Zambians, who can actually monitor on what is going on. Yeah. So we also reflected a little bit about, giving back results at individual level, and many participants supported this. They said it's really a good thing, and it's one way of showing gratitude to participants that took part in the study, and for the participants, for the former participants themselves, it's really a benefit. And also it's important as a respect to not only for the people but for the culture. And they also emphasize the fact that people have got the right to know, especially if other things are discovered, that relate to their health. Maybe the scientists need to come back to communities and tell them, that okay, we found out this, and that would really help in the management of their health and well-being. But also acknowledge, the disadvantages of actually doing that, in the sense that there's potential for stigma at community level and also at individual level, but more importantly, intimate partner violence. Yeah. I think this is what I have, and I've got colleagues here on the, I think on the call, who can also help reflect on some of the things we learned. As I said, that we right now, I think, developing a manual that will put everything together as a community engagement tool. Yeah. So I'd like to thank the PANGEA consortium, particularly Christoph, Lucy, and others, and also the Zambian contingent here that includes Mohammed, Helen, and also the people that directly took part in the development of the material. Monday is on the call, and so is Windy. So thank you very much.